Hello everyone and welcome to the first race in the main competition of Season 6. Today we're at Suzuka GP circuit, which is one of my favorite tracks ever, and it's got a great balance of both technical bits as well as some long straights, so this will really show which cars are the most balanced ones. So let's talk a little bit about the track before we get into the actual competition. So Suzuka has a very long main straight. You will see cars reach well over 250 kilometers an hour here on this straight, and then you need to brake hard into, in most cars, third gear through this first right-hander, and then the second right-hander here is a little bit tighter than the first one, which can be deceptive, and you might run wide if you don't brake enough for that second one. Then you have a few medium speed left and right combinations here, fairly like medium speed, medium length kind of corners here, and this really shows the handling tendencies of most cars. Do they understeer, do they oversteer, can they hold the line well, and most cars that we see will, although some oversteer a little bit more than others. And then here you get into a quick right-hand bend and then a slower right-hand turn. And then you have a short little straight here as you approach a very tight hairpin that in most cars you have to go through this one in first gear. It's quite tight. After that you accelerate out onto another short straight, and then you get into a fast, very long right-hander, and it goes slightly uphill here as well, and then you break into two left-hand turns. The first one is kind of medium speed, the second one is a little bit tighter, and then you go downhill and you get a long straight here. This is probably the second longest straight on the track. And once you pass through this, as you brake here, you go into a left-hander, kind of medium speed, again medium high I would say, definitely for these cars anyway, when you don't have much downforce. And then you brake into the final chicane here, quite tight and quite a big space in between the two corners, and then you have a fast right-hander through which you can accelerate full throttle, and you enter the main straight and you cross the finish line. So our first head-to-head is going to be the Delcia Amali versus the Coventry Climax. The Coventry Climax, I would say, is the faster out of two on the straight, but not by much, because neither of them are really that fast on the straight, comparatively speaking. The Delcia is certainly more stable on the braking and while cornering as well. The Coventry oversteers more, whereas the Delcia is better at holding down the power. And you can see this here through these bends. Yes, the Delcia actually had some understeer here, while the Coventry had quite significant oversteer. But overall, the Delcia does have only a small lead as of right now, and as they go through this corner here, the course does become a little bit faster, and so the straight line speed of the Coventry Climax is going to make it catch up a little bit up until here, but the Delcia is still ahead. And through this tight right-hander and then onto this short straight before the hairpin, the Delcia still holds a fairly comfortable lead. The Delcia is more stable on the braking and on the turning as well. As you can see, the Coventry almost oversteered there. I did just about catch it before it really oversteered badly, but the acceleration of the Coventry Climax has allowed it to catch up, and it is now slightly in the lead. However, through these corners here, once again the Delcia is more stable, and while they did pass that last checkpoint at roughly the same time, the Coventry was a little bit ahead, and it's going to build up a slightly bigger lead here on the straight. It's just able to reach a higher top speed before it needs to brake. And so here it has a pretty significant lead already over the Delcia Amali, but the Amali can brake later, and as you can see, the Coventry Climax was way sideways there on that first part of the chicane, and that allows the Delcia Amali to catch up quite a bit. It's not as far behind anymore, but it didn't catch up enough, so the Coventry will still take the win in 2:28.7. On to our next head-to-head, the Blue Streak versus the Scarab. Both cars pretty quick on the straights, with the Scarab maybe slightly faster, but not by much. And what you will see through this first part here is that both cars are truly excellent in the corners, well balanced, not too much oversteer, and really no understeer at all. And yeah, both cars have very good cornering speeds through here, and as a result they will both clock in with a split time here at this checkpoint under 35 seconds, which not all cars managed, but they are very close to each other. So while they are very quick compared to the other cars in this first section, they are very close to each other. And so that will continue through this part here as well, with the Scarab going quite sideways through this tighter right-hander, although the Blue Streak went sideways as well, but not as much. So it's slightly ahead for now as they both approach this hairpin left. And now onto the straight and onto the fast right-hander. The Scarab is, as we said, a little bit faster on the straights, so it's going to make up the little bit of time that it lost earlier. And again, both cars just really fast through this corner, and absolutely no problems for these two left-handers here. And still very much neck and neck. Now down this long straight here, the Scarab does have more power, so it's going to pull ahead a little bit. And we've also already previously established that the Scarab has excellent brakes. We've seen that on the previous tracks. And so it's a little bit ahead now, and it can also brake a little bit later for this final chicane. But the Blue Streak is still very much hanging with it up until this final corner anyway, and then the Scarab is basically just going to out-accelerate it, and it's going to finish with a 2:26.1. On to our next head-to-head, the Aero GPF4 versus the HFF Cake, and we know that the HFF is significantly faster on the straights, but the Aero has been really excellent in terms of cornering for most of the races we've seen thus far, except Tsukuba, where due to the much higher grip levels, its front end was actually too aggressive. But either way, here it's doing a great job, and surprisingly to me anyway, the HFF is keeping up with the Aero through these corners. Not to say that the HFF was handling badly before, not at all, but the Aero was always kind of a step above everything in terms of handling, especially at Hirochi, but the HFF is now keeping up. And so we know that the strengths of the HFF are yet to come on this track, aka the longer straights. And so while the Aero is still very much neck and neck with it for now, I think that's gonna change after this hairpin here. So we will see now both cars go through the hairpin with a pretty good line, and now we get to the fast right-hander, and you can already see the HFF pulling away. So I think the HFF makes something like 50 more horsepower than the Aero, while also weighing less, and so the difference in the acceleration is just astounding. and that'll be demonstrated once again here on this straight. You can just, even in this head-to-head format, you can pretty much see how much the HFF is pulling away, and as a result it's going to go through this checkpoint way earlier than the Aero, which itself is doing pretty decently, but no amount of handling advantage is going to make up this time difference in this final chicane, and so the HFF is going to go through this final right-hander already in the lead, and it's going to clock in with a time of 2:25.6, taking the lead from the Scarab. Next we have the Catan Corsa versus the Sabre 11, and the Sabre 11 is much faster down the straights than the Catan Corsa, not only because the Catan Corsa is limited to a little bit over 250 kilometers an hour from memory, which it does hit on this straight, but also the Catan Corsa is quite unstable at higher speeds, so the Sabre 11 took an early lead. But the Catan Corsa has already caught up, at least for now, because it's really excellent around these corners. And the cornering speeds is what gives it actually a small lead over the Sabre 11 for now, but I feel that might change fairly soon as we get into this faster part. Now around this corner they're pretty much neck and neck, and because both have pretty comparable braking performance, they are still even up until now, but as they get close to this hairpin, you were able to see that the Sabre 11 was already out accelerating the Catan Corsa on the way to the hairpin, and I think that's only going to continue here. So through this very long right-hander, the power advantage of the Sabre 11 is just obvious at this point. And even though the Catan Corsa takes these corners very, very well and very smoothly, it's not enough to make up the lost time from the power disadvantage compared to the Sabre 11. And the Sabre is just going to keep pulling ahead on this long straight, and is going to make it through this checkpoint here in well under 2 minutes. And then for the final chicane, again, no problems for either car, but the Sabre 11 is just way ahead already. And so it's going to continue building up its lead through this final corner and down the main straight, and it's going to clock in with a time of 2:25.6 ahead of the HFF. Our final pairing is going to be the Minos versus the Vento. And between these two, the Minos is faster down the straights, but the Vento is pretty quick in its own right. The Minos, of course, has the issue under braking with the strong wobble that can cause it to lose balance, and we saw a little bit of that already under braking for the first corner, but it's recovered, and of course through medium speed corners it's always been amazing. And so it is taking a small advantage over the Vento already, and through here where you can really start accelerating quite a bit through this long left-hander, the Minos is going to continue building its advantage. Now braking for these corners here is a little bit problematic with the Minos. It's easy to lose it, but if you do make it through it, it is pretty quick. And then of course accelerating up towards the hairpin, the Minos takes a larger advantage. And again, braking for this hairpin is a little bit tricky with it, but we made it through. And now the lead is going to grow over the Vento, because while the Vento again is pretty quick in the straights, the Minos is faster, it's much more powerful, and so it is able to build the lead, but the Vento is not too far behind. And now down this downhill straight here, the Minos is going to continue building its lead. And even though it's going to have quite a bit of wobble braking for this left-hander here, it remained somewhat stable enough at least. And then braking for this final chicane again, strong wobble, needed to brake earlier than with some other cars because of it, but it's able to make it through just fine, and it's able to defeat the Vento XF Caldera here, and it's going to clock in with a time of 2:25.9. So there it is, the Sabre 11 wins at Suzuka after having already won the qualifying round despite not coming first in any of the 3 qualifying races. Here at Suzuka, it's really the total package of the car that counts. It's got long straights, so you need power, but it's also got quite a few technical bits, a lot of like medium speed corners, some very tight corners. So the car needs to perform well through all of these different areas, and the Sabre 11 came out on top just barely ahead of the HFF. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see how it plays out next time at Bathurst. See you there.